this is the fun stuff, baby. Let's freaking get it. Like I said, in this video, we're going to be breaking down the discovery section of the script, which, in my opinion, is the most important part of a closing script, okay? And that's what I say here, all right? This is where the sale is won or lost. All right, mediocre sales coaches and mediocre salespeople are really only going to practice sales objections because they believe that that is what's going to get them to win the sale. If they know how to handle objections, that they'll actually win the sale. But what if there was a way that you can actually eliminate objections before they become objections, meaning that you actually reduce the amount of objections you get on sales calls and increase the amount of people that when you pitch the price the very first time, they say yes. Well, that's exactly what the discovery part of the script does. We are eliminating concerns before they become objections, and this is going to help you win a lot more sales without having to arm wrestle the prospect, right? Like I say here, expert sales coaches and expert salespeople practice the discovery section in addition to objection handling. I'm not saying that you're never going to get an objection again. Of course, you're going to get objections and you should be prepared to get objections, right? But expert sales coaches and salespeople practice the discovery section in addition to objection handling because they know that a strong discovery can eliminate objections from even happening in the first place. So if you want to be an absolute unit, if you want to be an absolute weapon on sales calls, then yes, practice objection handling. And we are 110% going to do that in this program. But we have to become masterful at the craft of conducting a discovery section of the sales call. All right, let's get into paragraph 2 here, okay? So that's the power of being great at this section. You can dramatically reduce the amount of objections you get and significantly increase your close rate by eliminating concerns before they even become objections. Master this module alone, and you will see an impressive increase in your sales performance. That is a true statement. Okay, now before we actually dive into what to say and break down every single part of the script, I want to really highlight like the main purposes of the discovery section. If we can have a really good understanding of like what the purpose of this section is, then once we get to the script part, it's going to make a lot more sense. So let's go ahead and break it down. Okay, so and this is in no particular order. All of these are equally important for the discovery section. But the first order of business here is in the discovery section, we want to eliminate and tie down concerns before they become objections. All right, let's put that into layman terms, okay? So layman terms, simply put, we're handling concerns and confirming that the concern is no longer a concern. All right, and here's why that's important, right? In our discovery, if we can ask probing questions that unearth our prospects' concerns, we can actually address those before price is even a part of the conversation. Once price becomes a part of the conversation and then you hear their concern, it becomes a double whammy. You have to overcome the concern, but you also have to overcome the concern with them knowing the price, right? But if we can handle these concerns in the discovery section, it's a lot easier because they don't know the price yet, right? So this is an extremely important part of the discovery section. Eliminate and tie down concerns before they become objections. Basically, handle the concern and confirm that the concern is not a concern anymore. All right, now, purpose number 2 of the discovery is to define their current state and also define their desired state. And once again, in layman terms, identify where the prospect is at for whatever your niche is. If it's relationship coaching, mindset coaching, fitness coaching, business coaching, we want to identify where is the prospect at, and then we want to identify where does the prospect want to go. All right, so what is their current state? And then what is their desired state? Now, point number 3 here really is kind of like 2A, because once we know their current state and desired state, we then need to widen the gap between the current state and the desired state. All right, let me describe what that means, okay? Weight loss is a great example. So let's say the person is 200 pounds and that is their current state. And let's say their desired state is to be 190 pounds. The gap is the distance between where they are and where they want to be, which in this case, the gap is really small. And when the gap is small, right, their need to fill that gap, to fill that void, to accomplish their goal is significantly less, right? But if this person was 300 pounds and they want to become 200 pounds, now the gap is a lot wider, right? So there's more tension there to solve this problem. All right, so our goal in the discovery is to widen that gap, right? Is to make the gap bigger between where they are and where they want to be, because the wider the gap between where they are and where they want to be, the more tension there is to relieve that pressure and solve that problem, meaning there's more of a need for them to purchase your coaching program. All right, so like I said, there are times where the gap is naturally wide, like that weight loss example. If someone needs to lose 100 pounds, right, the gap is already wide. Or if the person's broke and they need to start a business, the gap is already wide. Or relationship coaching, if they're on the brink of divorce, the gap is already wide. But then there are times where the gap isn't as wide, and we as leaders need to ask probing questions to elicit emotion that drives that prospect to want to make a change. All right. Now, also asking these probing questions is going to create a need to fill the void between where they are and where they want to be. All right. So that's the third purpose of the discovery section. All right. The fourth purpose of the discovery section is identifying the why of the why. All right, we're going to break that down. I'm going to talk about exactly what that means here in just a second. Now, I also will refer to this as the silver bullet. Okay. So first, let me break down the why, and then I'll kind of talk about the silver bullet. They're both the same thing, just kind of slightly different meanings. So the why is the core reason that they are on the call. All right. A lot of times, and I'll break this down even in more detail once we get into the next section here, but a lot of times prospects will give you the surface level why. And one of the big mistakes that coaches and closers make is they accept the surface level why as the why of the why, right? Giving you an example, if somebody comes on the call and you ask them what their why is, and they say their why is to lose weight, that is not actually their why, right? We have to view this like Shrek, right? Like Shrek has layers like an onion. We got to peel back all those layers to get to the core to figure out the real reason why they are on the call. And usually the real reason why is because the thing that they are on the call for is affecting other areas of their life. Because they haven't lost weight, they're not a great example for their kids, right? Because they're on the brink of divorce, right? They are extremely unhappy in their life, and it's causing depression, which is affecting their career and, overall well-being, right? Usually it has something to do with this is affected and it's affecting other areas of my life. Now, the silver bullet. So when I say the silver bullet, what I'm meaning is the one thing that they say in the discovery that gives you leverage in objection handling. So if they say, hey, I don't think now is the right time, or I need to think about it, you have a bullet in the chamber that you can fire because during the discovery, they said something that like really needs to get accomplished. For example, if I don't lose weight, the doctor is going to tell me that I'm going to die in 10 years, right? That's an extreme example. It doesn't have to be that extreme every single time, but that would be a silver bullet where if somebody said this is too much money, right? You could use that one shot in the chamber to say like, well, what's more money, losing your life or, right, like doing the program? See what I'm saying? All right, let's go ahead and read the notes that I have here, right? So identifying the why silver bullet. We want to ask probing questions to identify what their deepest reason is for being on the call. All right, I often refer to this as the silver bullet, the thing that gives you the most leverage at the end of the call if you get an objection. All right, now the fifth and final purpose of the discovery is to make the prospect feel heard and understood. Okay, so here's the deal. In coaching, obviously, it's very important to display your ability to have EQ, right? To hear people, to make them feel heard. But the reason this is really important is in life, a lot of people don't have somebody in their life that makes them feel heard and understood and seen, right? A lot of these problems that they're going to open up to you about on a sales call, they probably haven't opened up to somebody else in the same degree because they don't believe that they have somebody in their life that they can say these things to. So if you play your cards right, right, and you ask the right questions and you're listening to them and repeating back what they're saying and acknowledging what they're saying, right? You're using the RAC formula, repeat, acknowledge, question. You're going to make them feel heard. You're going to make them feel seen. And you're going to be the only person in their life that has made them feel that way about this particular problem. High probability that that statement is true. Now, because of that, they're immediately going to trust you, which breaks down the trust barrier, which is extremely high when purchasing an online program, right? They're also naturally going to like you and be gravitated to you, which is important quality of coaching. And then lastly, they're going to think you're a good coach, right? One of the good qualities of being a good coach is listening and hearing your people. So we're going to be breaking down the discovery section, and how we're going to do that is, as you guys can see, the discovery section breakdown portion of this document. I have each section, and then I wrote out the objective for each section. So we're going to go over the objective, and then we'll scroll on down, and we'll go to the actual script, and then we'll kind of role play out what this is going to sound like and what this should look like. So let's go ahead and do it. The first part here is the rapport section. Now, if you watch the discovery call module, there is no difference in the rapport section from the discovery call to the rapport section in the closing call. There's a slight variation because obviously if you did have a discovery call with somebody, you're not going to have the same opening conversation with them, and I'll discuss that in a second. But the structure, the nuts and bolts of it, the framework of it are more or less the same. So let's break it down. Backtracking here, but the total time of the discovery section should be 15 to 20 minutes. If it's longer than 20 minutes, then you are talking way too much. You're probably way off into left field on the sales script, and you're losing control and leadership of the call. Now, if your discovery section is less than 15 minutes, you probably didn't go deep enough. You didn't get enough information. You didn't elicit enough emotion, and you're probably not going to close that person. So the sweet spot, if we play this right, should be about 15 to 20 minutes for the discovery portion of this call. Now, for the rapport section, getting back to the rapport section here, this should only be about 30 to 90 seconds, okay? If it's longer than 90 seconds, once again, you're actually doing a negative to the call. You're probably talking way too much, and it's having the opposite effect. You're losing the leadership position of the call, right? The call is getting away from you, right? The person now is probably starting to ask you questions. They're leading the call. They're dictating the call. No, you have to grab control of the call. Okay, we're going to talk about how to grab control of the call, but before we do that, how do we actually build that initial rapport? So the purpose of building that initial rapport, and this should go without question, like you should understand this already, is that person has an invisible wall up when they come up on the call. Now, the thickness of that wall is really dependent on the person. Some people have a paper thin wall, and it's very easy to penetrate it, very easy for you to build connection and build rapport right away. Other people have like wall of China thickness, and it's really hard to break down their barriers, okay? So that's the goal of this section, is to start to chip away. You're not going to fully break through the wall at this point, but start to chip away at that wall so that we can bring down the wall and have a full human-to-human connection here, okay? Now, how we're going to do that, you should have a go-to conversation, all right? And when I say a go-to conversation, one that's natural, one that's authentic, and one that you could pretty much use on every single call. So my go-to conversation is always asking them where they're calling in from. Oh, that's amazing, you're in Arizona. What's the weather right now? I heard it's really hot. Oh, wow, I live in Texas, not too far off, ha, 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 right? Like that's the go-to conversation for me. Right, but identify your small talk go-to conversation. All right, now at the end of this section, right? So you probably have like 2 or 3 exchanges, like I said, 30 to 90 seconds. And at the end of this section, to grab control And before we get into the frame, so transitioning into the frame section here, you're going to say, are you ready to dive in? Okay, that is you leading the call. That is you dictating terms. That is you grabbing control of the call. And then you set the frame. All right, so let's actually go down to the script section here. All right, and let's go ahead and break down what this should sound like. All right, so very simply, they pop on Zoom, which I know we've kind of already talked about this, but your closing calls, 100%, every single one needs to be on Zoom, right? Face to face, you can see their body language, right? It's better for building that human to human connection. All right, so they pop on Zoom. You say, hey, what's up, Steve? How's your day going so far? Right? Sometimes if they're a talker, they will give you something, right? Maybe they say, my day, it hasn't gone so well, right? And maybe that's the thing that you cling on to ask additional questions about, right? Or they'll just say, oh, my day's going good. To which at that point, you will have to ask the question. So they will either be a talker, they'll give you something, you can ask follow-up questions about it, and that could be your back and forth exchange, or they just say good, and then from there, you can ask your own questions. Okay. Now, assuming that you did not have a discovery call with them, so this is truly a one-call close, I would say I would follow the question one framework. All right. So I would say, amazing to hear. Where are you calling in from? Right? That same thing that we talked about before, asking them where they live. Right? Now, from there, if they did have a discovery call with you, right, then we're going to do Q1A. All right. So if this is a 2-call close and you already know where they live and you kind of already had this conversation, then you could say, you say, hey, name, how's your day going so far? They fill you in. And then you say, amazing. I was just blank. And then you fill in the blank, right? Whatever you were just doing. Maybe you just got back from the gym. Maybe you just made lunch. Maybe you just got off a call with somebody else and it was really awesome, right? So you can say, amazing. I actually just got off a call with somebody, they wanted to lose 100 pounds and they signed on. Super excited to work with them. And then you could say anything exciting going on in your life right now, right? Opening the door for them to share something. Okay. Now, continuing on here. So if you used Q1, so if you ask them where they're calling in from, the next thing you would say is you would say, love that. And then you would say something about where they live and maybe something about where you live, right? So you can ask them a question saying like, oh, how's the weather there? Or, oh, I heard they have an amazing hike there. Have you ever done that hike before, right? And then if the question, if it's kind of going dry, you could just bring up like where you live. Like, oh, that's super cool that you live in Arizona. Heard it's super hot there. I actually live in Texas. It's 90 degrees right now too. So both in hot climates. How do you like living in a hot climate? Right? Just normal small talk. Like I know I'm talking a lot here, but literally it's very easy. It's just normal small talk. Okay. From there, you're going to respond back to what, so this is for question 1A. Let me do this. So it might be easier for you guys to follow along, right? So this is for question 1 if you use question 1. This is the second question if you use question 1A. So you would respond back to what they said is exciting in their life, and then you would ask another quick question. All right. If they have nothing exciting going on in their life, then you could just skip right down to this portion. All right. But all roads lead to this right here, right? So after those 2 to 3 exchanges, after those 30 to 90 seconds, you're just going to say, great. Well, hey, you ready to dive in? All right. So let me do a full, like, this is what it would sound like. Hey, Steve, how's your day going so far, man? Oh, dude, that's awesome to hear. Where are you calling in from? Arizona. Okay, really cool. I actually went there when I was 2 years old, but I really don't remember too much about it. What part of Arizona do you live in? Scottsdale. Yeah, funny enough, that's actually where my grandma used to live. How do you like living there? Really cool, man. Really cool. Yeah, I live in Austin, Texas, so another booming city. But anyways, man, you ready to dive in? It would basically go just like that. So that was maybe 30 seconds, right? Now, if it was the other way around, so I did a 2-call close with this person. This is the second call, and I've already kind of asked them where they live. Then this is what that would look like. I would say, hey name, how's your day going so far? Good to chat with you again. Awesome. Yeah, I was actually just at the gym, got a leg day in. How do you work out? Is that a part of your routine as well? Very cool. Anything exciting going on in your life right now? Oh, cool. It's your mom's birthday. How old is she turning? 55. Wow, very cool. Very cool. Awesome, man. Well, hey, you ready to dive in? Just like that, right? Very simple, very simple. All right, y'all. That is going to be section 1, rapport. Over section 2 here, which is going to be setting the frame. So this should be 30 seconds long. Okay, this is not going to be a really long part of the script. This is short, sweet, simple, to the point, and then you're off to the races. Okay, now the objective, there's really 2 objectives. Okay, number 1 is grabbing control of the call. You are the leader, you are dictating the terms, you are setting the expectation. Now, that sounds like really aggressive, right? It actually, the purpose of this call is actually to put them at, or the purpose of this section is actually to put them more at ease. So although, yes, we want to grab control of the call and leadership, right? Remember that invisible wall that we talked about? This section will also continue to chip away at that invisible wall. How is it going to do that? Well, you are answering a question that they have as well, right? And that question is, what the hell am I doing here? So we are answering that question on what the hell they are doing here. So 2 purposes, you are answering what the hell they are doing there for them, so putting them more at ease. And then 2, you are showing that you are setting the terms for this call. You are the leader of this call. All right, let's get into the actual framework. So I have this all written up here. You do not have to say this word for word, okay? And that's true with every part of the script. You just have to hit the main talking points, the main purpose, right? But you can say it however you want, all right? But how we have it is, all right, Steve, so today's call is really simple. We're gonna identify where you're at with your fitness and create a clear game plan to help you reach your goal. All right, if I feel confident that we can help you, I'll share my screen and I'll show you what we have going on here at the Act First Closing Academy. Now, if we mutually think that this is a good fit, then we can chat about potential next steps of you joining our program. And if it ends up not being a good fit, then I'll do my best to make sure you leave the call with some value. Does that sound good to you? So that's how it would sound. Let's go ahead and break it down. So today's call is really simple. I love that line because, like I said, the vibe that we're trying to give here is relaxed. The vibe that we're trying to give here is casual, right? We're trying to make them feel more at ease, that this isn't super serious, okay? Then from there, we say that we're going to identify, where they're at with their niche and create a clear game plan. That is something that we're going to do. All right. Then, if I feel confident, I'll share my screen and show you what we have going on here at company. All right. Notice how I didn't say, I'll show you our program. All right. Because that sounds more salesy. But if you just say, yeah, and I'll show you what we have going on here at Act First Closing Academy, right? It's more casual. And that's the vibe that we're going for. All right, from there, if we mutually agree that it's a good fit. So mutually means that I have to agree, but they have to agree. So I'm actually giving them some power here, right? Which is also going to make them feel more at ease, right? So mutually, if we think this is a good fit, then we will chat about potential next steps. I put the word potential in there because, once again, casual, relaxed, right? Go with the flow kind of vibes. Right. And then obviously this last sentence here, if it's not a good fit, I'm not going to pressure sell you. Now, you don't say that, but that's the vibe that this is giving you. If it's not a good fit, I'll just make sure that you leave the call with some value and some clear direction. Sound like a plan? They say yes, you get their buy-in, they're feeling good, they know what the hell's going on here, and they feel more casual, more relaxed. Boom, now we're off to the races. Okay, so that's section 2 frame. All right, the why. Truthfully, this is probably the most important question, maybe in the whole entire call, but definitely in the discovery portion of this call. All right. So like we talked about, the why. All right. So I'm going to give you more of a specific example here. But when I say why, that is the core reason they are on the call. And when we understand this, we know the real reason they're on the call, we have leverage, right? Because when they say, I need to think about it, it's too much money, whatever their objection is, well, we know what is really on their heart. We know what is bothering them. We know the pain, and that is leverage to overcome these excuses or these objections, okay? So here's the difference between the surface level why and the why of the why, because this is where majority of coaches make the biggest mistake. They don't go deep enough. They don't peel back the layers of that onion, right? Like we said with Shrek. Shrek has layers like an onion, right? They don't peel back enough layers. They kind of just accept and then move on, okay? So here's the surface level why. Awesome, Steve. Tell me, what's the biggest reason that you're on the call today? Chad, I just want to lose some weight. Oh, okay. That's awesome that you want to lose some weight. Why do you want to lose some weight? Oh, man, I just want more energy. That's good to hear, man. And then, and then the coach will just kind of move on. Obviously, I'm being facetious. It probably doesn't go exactly like that, but they leave that section accepting that energy is the main reason why they're on the call, that they want more energy, right? Or any other surface level reason why. For business, it would be that they want to make more money, right? They want to be rich. They want to have freedom, right? They want to have more time, right? And these are all surface level reasons why they were on the call. There is a specific reason they want more freedom. There's a specific reason they want more time. There's a specific reason they want more money. They want more energy. Whatever the external thing is that they say that they want, there is a much deeper internal reason on why they want it. And that's what we need to figure out. All right, so here would be an example of why of the why. All right, I'm gonna continue to use fitness here. I have a depth of knowledge in it. Okay, so basically, I would say, awesome, Steve. So tell me, what's the biggest reason you're on the call today? Chad, I just want to lose some weight. That's amazing, Steve, that you want to lose some weight. If you don't mind me asking, how much weight are you trying to lose? Okay, awesome. You want to lose 50 pounds. If you don't mind me asking, Steve, losing 50 pounds, how would that change your life? Well, Chad, it would give me more energy. Oh, okay, cool. More energy is great. What would having more energy do? Like, how would that impact your life? Well, when I come home, I'm not the best husband for my wife. I'm not the best father for my kids. Wow, okay. Tell me more about that, Steve. Like, what do you mean by that? Well, more specifically, I just kind of sit on the couch. My wife wants to hang out. I give her one word answers because I'm exhausted. My kids want to go outside. They want to play sports. On the days that I say, you know what, sure, I'll go and play with the kids, I can only play for like 5 minutes and they're really disappointed. Wow, Steve, I really appreciate you being vulnerable about that. If I'm hearing you correctly, the biggest reason you're on the call today is you want to be the best father and best husband that you could be, and you feel like your health is getting in the way of that. Is that true, or is there more? No, Chad, that's pretty spot on. That's what it's supposed to look like. We're supposed to get that level of depth. Okay, so now that we have an understanding, let's get into the actual scripting. All right, I'm really, really proud of how much I gave you guys. I don't think there are other programs out there that give you like this level of detail of follow-up questions that you should be asking, right? A lot of scripts that you get out there will just give you the main question. I'm trying to give you the questions to ask to dig deeper. I'm trying to give you guys those probing questions. Okay, so now with that said, because I am giving you all the possible probing questions that you would need, you may not need all of the probing questions, right? You may get that why, the why much quicker and much sooner. And that's okay. Some people are more open, some people are more reserved. I just want to give you all the possible ammunition that you would need. All right. So the very first question is once you say, are you ready to dive in? And then you go over the frame and they say, yes, that sounds like a plan to them. You're going to say, great. So tell me, what inspired you to want to make a change with and then whatever your niche is, with your marriage, with your business, with your health and fitness? Okay, so we're going to start really open-ended, top of the funnel, very general. Okay, and the reason we do that is we want to leave it open-ended because then, there's so many different directions that they can go. But whatever's on their heart and mind, we want them to say that, right? If we leave them with just a A/B question or a yes/no question, right, then there's really nothing we can do with that, right? There's no follow-up or probing questions we can go. So we're going to ask an open-ended question here. Great. So tell me, Steve, what inspired you to want to make a change with your fitness or make a change with your marriage? All right. Now, here's I'm going to start more general and then I'll get more specific. So after that, there's two things that we want to accomplish in this section. Okay. We want to identify their current situation and dig deep. And then we want to contrast their current situation by identifying their desired situation and digging deep. Okay. With this pattern, we will know where they're at and where they want to go. And within that, we will understand their why of the why. Okay. So I would say, and this goes in order, okay? So I have this in order. So once they give me something here, so tell me what inspired you to want to make a change with your marriage, right? And they give me something there. All right, now we're going to identify their current situation and dig deep, okay? So I would say the next thing, and like I said, this is in order. I would say, got it. I would acknowledge whatever they said. So I would repeat back up some of what they told me. And then I would say, tell me a bit more. What exactly are you experiencing right now by not having your dream marriage or dream whatever? Right. So let's just say it's fitness because, like I said, I've been in the fitness space for a while. So it just resonates with me. It's easy for me to come up with examples. So great. Tell me what inspired you to want to make a change with your fitness. Chad, I really just want to lose, some weight. Got it. Yeah, no, definitely. We work with a lot of people who want to lose some weight. Tell me a little bit more. What exactly are you experiencing right now by not having your dream fitness? Right. So now they're going to tell me the lack of energy, whatever, right? They're going to go one layer deeper, right? But it's still not the why of the why yet, right? To which at that point, right, usually we'll say, oh, tell me more about that or what else, right? So, for example, if they say, I'm just experiencing a complete lack of energy. I would say, oh, okay. What do you mean by that? Like, tell me more. What do you mean you're not experiencing energy? To which at that point, they will give me more information, right? And then usually what I'll ask there is I'll say, got it. Okay, cool. So, the lack of energy, you're not feeling like a great father, XYZ. Out of all the times in your life, Steve, why is now the time that you want to improve your health and fitness? Right? I'll get a little bit more information, right? So now we're going another layer deeper, right? Then from there, this question here sets me up for a tie down. All right. And I'll explain that in a second. So once they tell me the why now, right, I have a pretty good understanding just from these 4 questions, these 3 plus this one here. I have a really good understanding of their current situation, to which I want to tie down the fact that they are ready to make a change. So I would say, man, okay, so how much longer can you handle? And then insert their current situation. How much longer can you handle, not losing weight, not feeling energized, not feeling like the father that you're supposed to be? Well, Chad, I truthfully can't handle this for much longer. And then I would follow up and say, I hear you. So safe to say you're ready to make a change then. Is that true? Yes, I'm ready to make a change. Boom, I just tied down the fact that they are ready to make a change, right? So now in their mind, psychologically, they are ready to make a change. Okay, so recapping. This is how we're opening, okay? And then we get into identifying the current situation with these questions. And then we always want to end the identifying their current situation section by asking how much longer they can handle their current situation once you have an understanding of their current situation. And then we want to tie that down by saying, safe to say you're ready to make a change then, huh? All right, so do you have to use all these questions? No, but you want to use as much questions as you need to get a good understanding of their current situation to be able to ask this question and then this tie down question here. All right, so we're still not done with the why section, okay? So we want to contrast their current situation by having them speak about their desired situation, right? And there's power to them speaking about this. Them speaking about this further is going to elect those emotions that we want to elect that are going to widen the gap and drive them to want to make a difference here or make a change. All right, so then we're going to say, thank you for that. I have a really good understanding of where you're at currently. In a perfect world, where do you want to be with your health and fitness, right? So now, once again, going back to general, going back to broad, let them fill in the blank there. All right, then we're going to say, hey, that makes total sense. Can I ask a personal question? 2 reasons we want to say, can I ask a personal question? One, because when we say, can I ask a personal question, it's going to elicit a personal response, meaning they're likely going to go a little bit deeper. They'll go more personal with you. They'll unravel another layer of the onion here. The other reason is it's just polite, right? It's just good nature. Okay, cool. So makes total sense. Can I ask you a personal question? They say yes. I would say, how would reaching whatever they told me their goal was, or whatever they told me it's probably best if I say current situation. All right, so how would reaching Whoops, actually, desired situation. Sorry. How would reaching desired situation change your life that you aren't experiencing right now? All right. So how would, increasing your energy, losing this weight, how would that change your life that you aren't experiencing right now? Well, it would allow me to do blankety blankety blank. Oh, tell me more. What else? What else? What else? Right? Asking more probing questions. Okay. The last part here, when you feel like you have the why, which, like I said, at any point in this, you could feel like you have the why. Do you have to use all these questions? Absolutely not. Some people will be a lot more open about it, right? And you also can ask this question as many times as you need. This is more of like a litmus test. It's more of like a temperature gauge to see if you have the why, or if you need to keep digging. All right. So what it is, when you feel like you have the why, is you're going to say, hey, Steve, if I'm hearing you correctly, the biggest reason that you're here today is blankety blankety blank. You would fill in the blanks there. Is that right? Or is there something more? All right. And it's really important that we ask the question that way, because you're going to get two responses. They're either going to confirm that you have the why. So they're going to say, nope, you have it. Yes, that's the reason I'm on the call today. To which at that point, you can move on, right? Or two, they're going to say, well, yes, that's true, but also blank, blank. And then they'll tell you, like, if there is something more, they will do the work for you. They will tell you what was missing, right? So this is a beautiful way to end this section. It's a beautiful way to get confirmation that you have it. You can ask this at any point that you feel that you have it. You can also ask it multiple times if necessary as well. All right. But once you get confirmation that, yes, that's the main reason I'm on the call today, there is no reason for you to ask any more questions. No reason at all. You can then move on to the very next question. All right, so that's the why. All right, recapping, we start here, then we identify the current situation and dig deep. All right, once we've identified the current situation, we ask them this question here, which tees us up to be able to tie down the fact that they're ready to make a change. We contrast that by speaking about their desired situation. And when we feel like we have the why, we end with this question here. All right, getting right into the fourth section here, we're going to be breaking down the goal section, okay? So the goal section really has two purposes. Number one is to identify their goal, all right? Making sure that their goal is specific, measurable, and time-bound, all right? Generic goals are not going to move the needle, all right? Specific goals are going to give you and the prospect more clarity on that desired situation, right? Where they want to go. Now, the second section, or the second purpose, which is honestly probably the most important one, is the 1 to 10 question that we're going to ask. And this will make more sense when I actually go through it. But the purpose of this section is really, it's a thermometer, all right? And what we're measuring is we're measuring the level of importance and urgency that your prospect has to reach this goal. Now, this is a really good prospecting tool. It's very reaffirming, right? It's going to tell you if you should continue this call, or if you should end the call. All right. And we'll talk about specifics there in just a second here. Okay. Now, the other thing that this is going to do is if their desire, if their urgency, if their level of importance is really high, you'll also probably get more information on their why. And that will make more sense in a second here as well. Now, one really important note for the 1 to 10 question, which, like I said, this will make more sense when we get into the script. It's not a measure of 1 to 10, how bad do you want to join the program? It's a measure of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to reach this goal? And that's really critical, because a lot of coaches get that wrong, and a lot of prospects will misinterpret that as well. A lot of prospects will say, oh, probably an 8, and they're really answering like their desire to join your program, which instead we want to reframe the question so that they are answering scale of 1 to 10. How important is it for them to reach the goal that you just defined? Okay, so once again, we're going to go over the goal section, which also includes the 1 to 10 level of importance. This should take you about 3 to 5 minutes. There's two purposes: to get a specific, measurable, and time-bound goal, and then also to have your finger on the pulse of what their urgency level is in terms of wanting to reach this goal. All right, let's get into the actual scripting itself. Okay, so this comes right after the why section. All right, so your transition and what this is going to sound like is you're going to say, I appreciate you opening up and sharing all that. Really helps me to get a better understanding of your situation. What exactly would you say your goal is with fitness? And when we say that, like I said, we're looking for the specific, the measurable, the time-bound goal. Everything that we've talked about up until this point likely isn't specific, measurable, and time-bound. It's probably more pie in the sky, right? It's more of that emotional. It's more of that why of the why. It's not necessarily the logical goal, right? I want to lose 30 pounds in 6 months. I want to have 10 dates a month for the next 6 months. I want to make an additional 10K a month in 8 months. I want to increase my squat by 10 pounds in 90 days, right? Those are logical goals. Those are specific, measurable, and time bound. Usually in the why section, it's the emotion, right? So now we're trying to get that logical goal. Okay. So that's what we're looking for. You're not going to leave this question until you have the I want to achieve number in time frame. Okay. Okay. Now, from there, we're going to ask that 1 to 10 question. And like I said, this is probably the more important part of the goal section here. So we're going to say, great. Okay, so you want to lose 30 pounds in 6 months. So you're basically going to repeat back what they said. Great. So you want to lose 30 pounds in 6 months. Awesome. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you don't care at all, and 10 being you must make this goal a reality, how important is it for you to accomplish this goal? Now, this is really important because you want to, you don't just say on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to reach the goal? Because you haven't defined what that scale is. So you want to say, awesome, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you don't care, and 10 being you must make this goal a reality. How important is it for you to accomplish this goal? So tell them what the scale is. All right. Now, there are many different outcomes here. All right. And this is where things get a little bit more complex, but stay with me. I'm going to break down all of it. All right. So a very simple one is they tell you they are a 10. All right. So they tell you it's a 10 out of 10. It's extremely important. All right. I should light up if they say this. This is a prospect that is in the buying pocket. They are ready to rock and roll. All right. Now, we don't just move on though. All right. This is an opportunity to get more information about why they are on the call. And you might be like, Chad, this is getting really redundant. This is getting really repetitive. I promise you, when you use the script, you will likely get new information here. You will likely get something that you didn't get in the why section. Okay. Now, is that true 100% of the time? No, but majority of the time, from my experience, I get new information here. So they say, Chad, I'm a 10. I say, wow, that's amazing. So it's really, really important for you to accomplish goal. And I'll say what their goal is. So it's really important for you to lose these 30 pounds. Why is it a 10 for you right now? Right. So why is it a 10 for you right now? Right. So now they're going to tell us a little bit more information, right? When they tell us that information, right, then we can move on to the next section. Okay. So that's one possible outcome. All right. Now, the other possible outcome and more likely outcome is they're going to tell you that it's less than a 10. All right. So eights, nines, and tens, like I wrote down here, I do let some eights through. I do let some nines through. I always let tens through. Anybody who's less than an 8, there's a high probability that I'm going to end the call right there. But regardless of what they tell me, all right, so if they say anything less than a 10, if they say they are a 9, an 8, a 7, a 6, a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, I'm going to say, got it. And what would make this a 10 for you? I know you're an 8, but what would make this a 10 for you? Okay. Now, there's a couple things that are going to happen here. Okay. So there are really two things that are going to happen here. They're either going to give you a concern, some sort of concern, all right? And a concern would be money or time, right? In my opinion, that is not an accurate answer for this question, right? We want to know money aside, time aside, how important this goal is, right? So we are going to tie down the concern and reframe the question. That's one possible outcome. Okay, the other possible outcome here is if they say they are less than a 10, if they are an 8, 9, or 10, if they give a solid reason why they're not a 10, I may still let them go through if they are an 8 or a 9. Okay, so a solid reason would sound something like, you know, Chad, I really want to lose this weight, but nothing will surpass my family. My family is number one. That to me is like, okay, that's justifiable. That's a valid reason. I get it, but this is still important for you, right? Like an 8 is still important for you. Oh yeah, it's still important for me. I just put family, I put church, I put my wife, I put that at number one, and nothing will beat that. Makes total sense. That's somebody I'm probably going to move forward and continue the call with. But if they tell me they're less than a 10 and I get the vibe that they are just not serious about reaching this goal, I am probably going to end the call. And that's another possible outcome. Okay. Let's go over ending the call and then because that's a little bit less complex. And then we'll go over the if they misunderstand the question and how to handle a concern and reframe the question. Okay, so they tell me they're less than a 10. I ask them what would make it a 10 for you, and they give me an answer, and I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I really don't feel that this person's very serious about this. Okay, so if they say like, oh, you know, Chad, I don't know, like I've been at it for years. This is more of a want than it is a need, right? I might say like, okay, so just to confirm, like it's not super serious for you to accomplish this. Is that right? I will always ask a follow-up question to confirm. So, okay, cool. So just to confirm, like this isn't like super serious for you. Am I understanding that right? Yeah, no, that's correct. Right. Then I'm gonna hit them with this. So I would say, hey, no worries. Totally get if this isn't a priority for you right now. Really, we only want to work with clients who are like 10 out of 10. They have to accomplish this. However, you know, we don't believe in burning bridges. So why don't we do this? I would love to invite you into our free community. This is where we help other ideal clients solve insert challenge. And then, you know, if this ever increases as a priority on your priority list, reach back out and I'd love to continue the conversation. Does that sound like a fair plan to you? They say yes. You send them the link to your free community, and then you end the call from there. Okay. So let's get into the other potential avenue here. Okay, so the other potential avenue here is they misinterpret the question because once again, it's money aside, it's time aside, right? We just want to know in a vacuum how important this question is or how important this goal is. But if they do give a concern, this is an opportunity for you to eliminate that concern before it becomes an objection. All right, so if we scroll back up here and we go to the challenge section, so right here in the challenge section, you'll see how you can tie down some of these questions. Okay, so you'll see how you can tie down some of these concerns. All right, but you know, these concerns may also come up in the challenge section as well, right? And it may be better for you to handle them in the challenge section. So if you don't want to handle them in this section and you just want to reframe the question, to me, that's totally fine, right? So if you want to say, and this is what that would sound like, right? So I would say, just starting from the top here, you know, scale of 1 to 10, how important is this? 1 being you don't care, 10 being you have to make this goal a reality. Well, Chad, it's an 8. Got it. What would make it a 10 for you? Well, you know, just having more time in my day would make it a 10 for me. Awesome. No, I totally understand that. You know, time aside, how important is it then? 1, you don't care. 10, you have to make this a goal, a reality. How important would it be for you then, time aside, right? If you just want to reframe the question that way and not handle the concern yet, and you would rather handle the concern in the challenge section, that's totally fine. You can do that. But if you want to be opportunistic and you want to handle the challenge right then and there, then we would use these frameworks here. Now, the frameworks, I'm going to go over these frameworks in the next section, in the challenge section, so I won't waste time in this video doing that, but just know in the next video, you'll learn how to handle those concerns, how to tie down and eliminate those concerns before they become objections. All right, so let's recap this again. I know, like I said, this is a little bit more complex than some of the other sections, but let's recap this section in its entirety. So the very first thing we're going to do, we're going to get a specific measurable time-bound goal. Once we have the specific measurable time-bound goal, we're going to ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being they don't care, 10 being they have to make this goal a reality. How important is it for them to accomplish this goal? If they say they're a 10, why are they a 10 right now? So why is this so important to you? If they say anything less than a 10, got it. What would make it a 10 for you? Okay. Now, if they are 8s and 9s, we let some of those slip through if they have a compelling reason why they are not a 10. If they are below an 8, so a 7, a 6, a 5, a 4, a 3, and a 2, there's a high probability that they are not going to move forward, meaning that you are not going to let them move forward. Now, if they misinterpreted what you said, and the reason they're a 6 or a 7 is because they give you a concern like having more money or having more time, right? Then all we need to do is reframe the question. And then if you get a higher response, like an 8 or a 9 or a 10, then you're probably going to move forward with the call. But if they still stay stuck below an 8, then you would end the call right here by inviting them to your free group. Okay, so that's the purpose of this section. I'm trying to think if I missed anything else. Reframe, handle concern. Yeah, that's the last thing. If you want to handle the concerns in this section, you can. If you want to be opportunistic and just handle it right then and there. If not, you can wait to handle the concern into the challenge section. All right. Hopefully you guys are finding this valuable. I love talking about the discovery section. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the challenge question. All right. Lots to talk about in the challenge section. This one's probably going to be really eye-opening for you because coaches make a ton of mistakes here. All right. And closers too. All right, so this one's going to take you about 3 to 5 minutes here. Okay, the objective here. So in this section, we don't just want to be an order taker. And that's the big mistake that a lot of coaches and closers make in this section is they say, what is your challenge? Yep, yep, yep. And they're just order takers. They just write down a list of challenges and move on to the next section of the script. That is a grave, grave mistake. Okay, that's not what we want to do here. We do want to understand their challenges, and we do want to use their challenges as an opportunity to widen the gap. And we're going to talk about that. But really what we're doing here is we're fishing for concerns that we can eliminate and tie down. This is really the section that you'll be able to turn concerns, eliminate them so they don't become objections later on. All right. Now, like I said, widen the gap with their list of challenges, eliminate concerns before they become objections. I have a list of questions here that will help you widen the gap. Okay. And then I have a list of the concerns that you're going to get and what the tie down frameworks are. And we're going to break all those down. But before we do that, I do think it's important for you to understand what is the difference between a challenge and a concern. So a challenge is something that's holding them back from reaching their goal, like something more strategic, right? So for example, lack of strategy is a challenge. A failing strategy is a challenge. Lack of accountability, lack of clarity, lack of support and community, mindset. These are all challenges, things that are holding them back from reaching their goal. All right, then you have concerns. I don't know if I have enough money. How much is this? I have to budget. I don't have time for this program. Now is not the right time. I need to talk to my spouse. These are more concerns, right? Think about concerns are just objections said in the discovery script or the discovery portion. Okay. Concerns are just objections that are said in the discovery portion, where challenges are things that are inhibiting them from reaching their goals. All right. These are all the tie down frameworks. Okay. And like I said, we'll go over those when we get to that point. All right, let's get down to the actual script and then we'll scroll back up and go over all that good stuff as well. All right, so recapping, we have their why the why, we have their specific measurable and time-bound goal, we have their level of urgency for reaching this goal. All right, now it's time to get into the challenge section. So you're gonna say, sweet, so losing 30 pounds is a 10 for XYZ reason, or whatever they said. If you let them through and they were an 8 or a 9, you can fill in the blank there, right? Basically, we're just repeating back what they just told us. All right. What would you say are your biggest challenges and concerns? Okay, so we want to say both words, not just challenges. We want to say challenges and concerns because both words hold different meanings. Okay, so what are your biggest challenges and concerns to reaching your goal? All right, you can repeat the goal if you want to, or you could just say your goal. All right, now you want to say what else until they say that's it, right? So they're going to start telling you challenges, and you're going to say, oh, that's amazing. What else? What else? What else? And when they say that's it, then we haven't maximized the list. Okay, so we want to maximize this section. Get every single challenge you can until they tell you that is it. Okay, now you also want to ask them, so after you get a list of their challenges, you also want to ask them, and are there any mindset challenges holding you back from reaching your goal? And then I would fill in the blank because they may not know what that means. And I would say like fear, doubt, imposter syndrome, and then they'll be able to answer that. Okay. So we have a list of challenges, potentially some concerns worked in there. We know if they have any mindset challenges as well. All right, now is your opportunity to widen the gap and tie down concerns before they become objections. Okay, so let's scroll back up. And we're working on this right now, but we're gonna have all this in tabs. So instead of scrolling back and forth, you'll be able to click a button really easily and it'll bring you to that portion of the script. All right, so let's talk about widening the gap first, right? So widening the gap, we're only gonna speak to their challenges. We're not gonna speak to their concerns here, okay? So we're gonna say, how long have these been challenges, right? So, lack of strategy, lack of accountability, right? Things like that. How long have those been challenges for? And I would also verbally say like, oh, hey, amazing. So lack of accountability, lack of strategy. How long have those been challenges for? Now, if they say for a while, right, or they indicate that it's been a while, you're going to say, got it. That must be really frustrating for you asking a question. And then you're going to say, once they say, yeah, it's been really frustrating, you're then going to say, assuming that's why you're looking to make a change then, right? And we're going to tie down once again that they are looking to make a change, right? So further confirming that, yes, they are looking to make a change. Now, if you say, how long have these been challenges for? And they indicate that it has not been a while, then you're going to say, got it. So assuming you're looking to make a change before this challenge becomes prolonged, is that right? They're going to say yes, and then you'll say smart, right? So we're widening the gap there. How are we widening the gap? We're widening the gap basically by hitting on the frustrations of the challenge if it's been a while, getting them to confirm that they want to make a change. And if it hasn't been a while, confirming the fact that they don't want it to be a while and they're looking to make a change. Looking to make a change is the key part there. That's what widens the gap. Okay, so that's what I would do with their list of challenges. Now with their list of concerns, we take a different approach. We want to use the tie down frameworks here. Now, they may give you no concerns at all, right? You might not get money or time or timing or spouse. You might not get any of that. And that's good, right? That's fine. We can move on. But if we do, then we want to make sure we use these frameworks. Okay, so I'm going to start with the money one. All right, so basically, let's start here actually. For all of these frameworks, they follow this simple 4 steps. We agree with them. So pretty much we handle it just like an objection, right? So we agree with them. We solve the concern. We confirm that the concern is no longer a concern. And then we move on. And the moving on part is really important. Why is it important? It's important because a lot of closers, a lot of coaches will stay stuck on the concern. They will go down this massive rabbit hole and they'll make it more of a problem than it needs to be. So agree with them, solve the concern, confirm the concern is no longer a concern, and then move on. All right, let's go over these tie down frameworks. All right, so starting with money. So if they say that money is a concern, right? I would say, hey, totally get that money is a concern. If we get to the end of the call and that you feel that this program can 110% help you reach goal, insert their goal, are you open to getting resourceful so we can come up with a payment plan that's fair for you, but also fair for us? If they say, yes, I'm open to getting resourceful, then we move on. We've confirmed that this concern is no longer a concern, and we move on. Cool. All right. Now, if they say no here, right, then they might be disqualifying themselves. They might say, nope, not open to getting resourceful, not willing to spend a dime on this, right? They may be disqualifying themselves as a prospect. You can either choose to downsell them at that point if you want, or you can send them to your free group. Okay. Now for time, okay, so for time, they say, I'm just not sure if I have the time for this program. All right. I know I put timing in here, like now isn't the right time. I usually don't actually, I can't really recall ever a time that I got that in the challenge section. It's possible, but usually I don't have the time, meaning like I'm too busy. Right. So here's how I would handle that. I would say, hey, totally get it. We work with a ton of busy clients. Let me ask you this. The minimum effective dose to be successful in our program is X hours. And that would be X hours, just to be clear, that's X hours a week. Is that something you could fit into your schedule? If they say yes, then great. We've tied down the concern. We've eliminated that concern. It's no longer a concern. If they say no, that they can't do that amount of time, then we want to pull on their heartstrings a little bit, okay? Because obviously we want to make sure they can make the time. So I would say, hey, totally understand. I know goal, so whatever their goal is. I know losing 30 pounds is really important to you because you want to be a better father. Are you willing to get resourceful with your time to make this work? Right? At this point, if they say, yes, I am willing to get resourceful with my time, I would just reassure them. I would say, hey, that's awesome to hear. You know, when you become a client, we can customize your program to match your schedule. Does that sound good? They say yes, and then you move on, right? If they say no, they're not willing to get resourceful with their time, then guess what? I'm going to strongly consider ending the call at that point. All right. Now, if they say timing, like I said, it's really not one that I've seen. I just put it in there because it's a possibility. It's just not one that I've really seen. If they say timing, I'm probably going to play on their heartstrings and say something like this. I'll say, hey, totally get if now isn't the right time. I know losing 30 pounds is really important to you, so you could become a better father. Are you willing to be flexible there? And if we can make this the right time, are you willing to be flexible with that so that we can help you accomplish your goal? And then same thing, if they say no, I'm probably not moving forward. If they say yes, then that's great. Okay. Now, this is another one that I haven't really seen, but I just want to make sure that you guys are fully prepared, and that's spouse, right? So if they say a concern is, I need to talk to my spouse, right? I almost want to dismiss it. And the reason I almost want to dismiss it is based on the way that we teach how to handle the spouse objection, which we will obviously go over in the objection handling module. But I would basically say, hey, totally understand you wanting to speak to your spouse. We're not in the business of divorce here. And then usually I show them my ring finger. And then I say, let's still go through the call. And if we mutually think it's a good fit, this way you have all the information that you can bring back to him or bring back to her. Does that sound fair? They say yes, I move on. Okay. The last tie down framework here. So I know mindset is not a concern. I know mindset is a challenge. We still want to tie down mindset. The reason we still want to tie down mindset is 95% of the time, what is underneath every single objection is some sort of mindset challenge, some sort of negative belief that we need to turn into a newfound positive belief, right? So we still want to tie this down if you get a mindset hurdle. Okay. So here's what I would say. Hey, I totally get blank being a challenge. So whatever it is, imposter syndrome, fear, doubt, I totally get doubt being a challenge. And I appreciate you being vulnerable about that. We have helped a ton of clients through doubt before. Let me ask you this. I know why, so whatever their why is, I know losing 30 pounds to be a better father is really important to you. Are you going to let something as silly as doubt get in the way of that? Are we going to move past this once and for all? Get them to confirm they're going to move past this once and for all. Boom, we eliminated that sucker, right? We tied that sucker down. All right, so that's the challenge section. Once again, you're going to get a list of their challenges and concerns. You're going to ask them for their mindset challenges as well. Once you have that list, you're going to widen the gap on their challenges. And then if you have any concerns, you're going to tie down and eliminate those concerns. And once they're tied down and eliminate, you're going to move on. Bada bing, bada boom. Just like that, we're moving on to the next section here, which is going to be the tried section. Now, there's only two outcomes of the tried section. They've either tried something to reach their goals or they have not tried something to reach their goals. And we're going to play into both answers there. Okay. Now, the time in which it should take for this section, like all the other sections, about 3 to 5 minutes. Obviously, if you could do it in less and still hit the objectives, you are golden. Okay. So the objective, the purpose of this section is to identify if they have or have not tried anything to reach their goal. No matter their answer, we will use this information to widen the gap. Okay. Well, let's get on down to it. Okay. So we are right here. All right, so we're gonna confirm their challenges. We're gonna repeat what they say. So we're gonna say, okay, to confirm your challenges are blank, blank, blank. Those are the biggest things holding you back. What have you tried so far to overcome these challenges and reach whatever their goal is? Reinsert their goal. Okay, now, like I said, there's only two outcomes. They haven't tried something or they have tried something. Regardless, we're going to use that to widen the gap here between where they're at and where they want to be. Okay, so if they have not tried anything, we're going to say, and this is in order, we're going to say, no worries. How long has this goal been a thought? You know, how long have you been thinking about losing 30 pounds? Okay, so you've been thinking about this for 6 months, for 3 months, for 12 months, for 5 years. Why haven't you taken action on it sooner? All right, so what's going to pop up here is the reason why they haven't taken action on it sooner, which guess what? Is probably also going to be the reason why they wouldn't join your program. Because if they haven't taken action on it and it's been 6 months, you know, it's probably going to be the same excuse, the same objection they give to joining your program, which gives you an opportunity to handle that concern and tie it down. Okay, remember, we agree, handle the concern, confirm that the concern is no longer a concern, and move on. And that's for any concern that you get here. That's going to be the framework. Okay. So that's what we want to do here, right? This widens the gap because it highlights, it puts a flashlight on, it puts a blue light on the fact that, you know, it's been X amount of time, they haven't taken action on it. And then it's going to unearth the reason why they haven't taken action on it. Okay, now, if they have tried something, right? So if they have tried something to reach this goal, or if they are currently trying something to reach this goal, then this is what you're going to do. You're going to maximize the list of everything that they've tried. So what else, what else, what else, until they say that's it. Then you're going to say, how long have you been or did you do the things that you just told me you did? So how long have you been doing, or how long did you do the things that you just told me you just did, right? And you would list those out. Then you'd say, do you like it? Or did you like it? What about it do or don't you like it, right? So they're either going to say they do like it or they don't like it. You're going to say, what about it did you like? Or what about it don't you like? Then you're going to say, got it. And why all of a sudden do you want to stop doing X, Y, Z and try a new strategy? You know, why do you want to stop what you have been doing or what you did do, right? Like more or less you're saying, why are you stopping that to try this or to try something new? Right? They're going to give you an answer. Then you're going to say, got it. Got it. So it's fair to say that you haven't been getting the results that you want in the time that you expected using blank, whatever strategy they said that they've been using. Okay. So now we're going to tie down the fact that it's fair to say that they haven't been getting the results that they want. Right? Then we're going to say, got it. And is it also fair to say that you're open to moving on from XYZ to try something new? And they're going to say yes. So we tied down the fact that they're ready to try something new, and we widen the gap by showing them what they have been doing has not been working. Okay. So that is very simply the tried section. Obviously, get a list of the things that they've tried. Ask these questions to widen the gap. If they haven't tried anything, we want to find out why they haven't tried anything, what's been holding them back from trying things sooner, and then we want to eliminate that concern and tie it down as well. All right, that's everything for the tried section. Man, I am so in love with this discovery script. Like we have done so much emotional work on this prospect at this point. Like they are in the buying pocket. They are ready to rock and roll. And then I feel like this question, which is a question that I came up with, I really don't know anybody else that uses this question, really just like, I feel like pulls it all together right before we get into the presentation. So how long is this one going to take? 3 to 5 minutes, just like all the others. Okay, the objective of this section is to also continue to widen the gap by having the prospect articulate and visualize the fork in the road decision that they have ahead of them. More specifically, the prospect is going to talk about if they do versus if they don't take action on this goal. Okay, now keep in mind, it's not taking action on this program, it's taking action on this goal in general. Okay, so let's go down to it. All right, so right here, right after the tried section, you're going to say, okay, I want to project out 12 months into the future. How do you think your life and fitness or health or marriage or business would look 12 months from now if you keep going down this path, meaning you don't make a change? Right now, you're going to want to dig deeper, right? So you're going to dig deeper. You're going to say, tell me more, tell me more. And when they tell you that's it, then you've gotten the full scope here. But basically, we want them to visualize and communicate to you what life would look like 12 months from now if nothing changed. Okay. So say, what else? Tell me more, right? Dig deeper. And then you're going to flip it and you're going to go positive and you're going to say, I hear you. All right, let's flip it and go positive now. How would your life and business look 12 months from now if you committed to reaching this goal and accomplished this goal? What else? What else? What else? What else? Until they say that's it, we keep asking that. All right. Then we're going to hit them with this. Okay. And the timing of this is really important. So you're going to say, I hear you. Let's flip it and go positive. Okay. How would your life and business look 12 months from now if you did decide to commit to this goal and accomplish this goal? Almost immediately after they give you the last thing, you're going to say, and you're going to lean in and you're going to say, are you willing to settle for anything less than that perfect vision? They're going to say, no. Boom. Once again, confirming in their mind that they are not going to settle for anything less than their goal. All right. Let me just see. Cool. All right. That's it for this section. All right. We're actually going to do 2 for 1 here. I'm going to cover the needs section and the recap section because they more or less pretty much go hand in hand. Okay. So the needs section, 3 to 5 minutes. The objective here is very strategic. It may seem like a simple section, which it is, but it is very strategic. So basically what we're doing is we're asking them what they need to accomplish this goal. Now, the timing of which we ask this question is the strategic part. All right, so what I mean by that is we're asking this question right before we present them the program. So they are going to tell you everything that they need. And then guess what? More than likely, 99% of the time, in the presentation, you're going to highlight all the things that they told you that they need, which in their mind, they're going to connect the dots and they're go, oh, yeah, this is the perfect program for me. It literally checks all my boxes because you just had them articulate and communicate what those boxes are that need to be checked. And then you check the boxes immediately after when you present them the program. All right. So it's very strategic in that way. A lot of times you'll hear, and this is my favorite thing, they're like, man, I feel like, this is just like a match made in heaven, or, I feel like the universe like is aligned here and maybe this is meant to be, right? They almost think it's like this esoteric thing, which maybe it is. All right. So, how we're going to, say that is we're going to add context to whatever they said previously. So acknowledge what they said previously. And then we're going to say, great. So before we get into talking about what we have going on here at the Act First Closing Academy, or what we have going on here at whatever company you are a part of, what do you feel like you need to reach your goal once and for all? Usually they say things like accountability, strategy, support, community, right? Which, like I said, everyone's program has those things. So when we share the screen and we go through the presentation, bada bing, bada boom, you check those boxes. All right, once you have a list of the needs, and that's all you're doing here is just getting a list of needs. There's no special strategy beyond that. Just get the list of needs. Okay. Then we can go into the recap. So the purpose of the recap is to display that you hear them and understand them, which is one of the important parts of the discovery, if you remember back earlier in the video. All right. So we're just going to recap the whole entire discovery. So what we do here is we're going to say, awesome, based on our conversation, I 100% feel like we can help you. Before I share my screen and walk you through how, I'd love to recap everything that we discussed so far. Let me know if I missed anything, okay? So your goal is blank. The reason you want to achieve that goal is blank. Your biggest challenges to reaching that goal are blank. You've tried blank, or it could be that you've tried nothing, and you feel like you need blank to be successful. Is that about right? Or did I miss anything? And then they're going to say, usually they'll say, no, that's amazing. Honestly, you said it better than me. And then from there, we are done with the discovery and we move on to the presentation. All right, y'all, do not sleep on this section. This module is absolutely critical. If you have any questions, of course, please speak up because once again, this is a very, very, very important part of the script, if not the most important part of the script. All right, so speak up if you have questions. Watch this as many times as you need, and I will see you in the next module. Peace.